Hi, I'm Leanne Prowlis. I'm going to be virtually presenting my study titled The Effect of Perceived Child Traits and Parents' Discrepancies on Parent-Child Relationship Quality. So I'll first talk about discrepancies, what they are, what they may affect, before moving into relationships and resolving discrepancies, and how it ties into relationship satisfaction and parental satisfaction. I'll share my hypotheses, methods utilized, results, and I'll close with a discussion. So self-discrepancy theory states that each individual possesses what are known as mental representations for our actual self, our ideal self, and our ought self. So for example, an actual own mental representation describes the self that a person believes they actually are, or the characteristics that they believe they actually have. An ideal own representation describes the self that a person would ideally like to be, or the traits that they would ideally like to have. An ought-own representation describes the self that a person believes that they should be, or the traits that they believe they should have. Along with these, there are the actual other, the ideal other, and the ought-other representations, which describe the self that a person believes that other people think they actually are, the self that a person believes other people would ideally like them to be, and the self that a person believes that other people believe they should be, respectively. The actual own and actual other representations make up what is known as the self-concept, whereas all of the other representations act as self-guides. And self-guides help people identify which traits to work toward. When there is a gap between the actual own, actual other representations, and any of the other representations, we have what is referred to as a self-discrepancy. Okay? So for example, if a person has an actual own, ideal own discrepancy in the trait of athleticism, then the extent to which they believe they are actually athletic differs from how athletic they would ideally like to be. Self-discrepancy theory also argues that different types of discrepancies predict different emotions. So for example, an actual own, ideal own discrepancy, like Steve's got over here, is related to dejection-related emotions such as dissatisfaction and disappointment. Actual own, ideal other discrepancies are related to dejection-related emotions such as shame, embarrassment, or feeling downcast. Actual own, ought other discrepancies are related to agitation-related emotions such as worthlessness. And actual own, ought other discrepancies are related to fear or restless-related emotions. Objective self-awareness theory states that in order for a person to be emotionally affected by a self-discrepancy, they have to be aware that one even exists. When a person is aware of a discrepancy, their motivation to reduce it is related to the size of the discrepancy and whether or not they believe it's even attainable. Previous research has found that people tend to engage in various compensatory behaviors in order to reduce or resolve their discrepancies. One of these is by entering into relationships with people who they believe possess their ideal traits, their discrepant traits. And doing so has been found to facilitate ideal realization. Also, confusing or misattributing a partner's traits with their own may allow people to believe that their ideals are closer to realization. In the context of the parent-child relationship, parents who misattribute their child's traits to themselves may also be allowed to believe that their own self-discrepancies are smaller. Similarly, possessing positive illusions of one's child has been shown to contribute to parental satisfaction in biological, adoptive, and step-parents, such that when there was a presence of these positive illusions, there's greater parental satisfaction. And these findings suggest the likelihood that believing one's child possesses one's ideals may positively affect parent-child relationship satisfaction and parental satisfaction throughout the span of the parent-child relationship. So for the current study, I have two hypotheses. The first was that if a parent had a self-discrepancy for the study in the trait of intelligence, and they also perceived that their child possessed this trait, they would report higher parent-child relationship satisfaction and higher parental satisfaction than if they didn't perceive their child possessed their discrepant trait. I also hypothesized that if a parent did not have a discrepancy in the trait of intelligence, they would report no difference in their parent-child relationship satisfaction or parental satisfaction, regardless of whether they perceive that their child possessed this trait or not. So for this study, we recruited participants from Amazon Mechanical Turk. Our sample consisted of 352 parents over the age of 18, 148 of whom were men, and 204 of whom were women. Our survey consisted of an informed consent and demographic information such as age, parental status, sex, age of the child, and number of children the parents had. We also included a discrepancy manipulation, and this was in the form of 2 prompts about historical figures. And we used historical figures because previous studies have used similar exemplars, and historical figures are relatively well known to most people. So for these prompts, the goal here was that parents, when presented with the Albert Einstein prompt, would engage in a social comparison process, which would lead them to feel less intelligent by comparison after seeing Al. For the Bobby Orr prompt, the goal here was that participants who were presented with this one would, if they engaged in a social comparison process, feel no more or less intelligent than they did before seeing Bobby. After this, we included an attention check to make sure that participants paid attention to the manipulation, and a manipulation check to make sure that it worked. We also had a perception of child intelligence manipulation, and this also consisted of 2 prompts about historical figures. And the goal here was for parents to engage in a social comparison process of their child to these figures. So for the parents presented with the Anne de Gaulle prompt, the goal was for them to engage in a social comparison process, comparing their child intelligence to Anne, and perceive their child as more intelligent after being presented with this prompt. For those presented the Shirley Temple prompt, the goal was for parents to perceive their child as no more or less intelligent than they did before seeing and reading about Shirley. For these, we also included an attention check and a manipulation check. Okay. Our survey also included a modified version of the parent-child relationship satisfaction scale. And this was modified to get parents to focus in on their oldest child. So for example, items on this scale such as my current relationship with my child is strong, and I currently feel like part of a team with my child, were modified to change the my child to my oldest child. We also included the parenting sense of competence scale as a measure of parental satisfaction. Items on this scale consist of things like being a parent is manageable and any problems are easily solved, and being a parent makes me tense and nervous. So we first examined participants' responses to the attention checks, and we removed those who answered 66%, so 2 or more of the 3 incorrectly, which resulted in 94 participants being removed, and this left us with a remaining sample of 258 parents. Okay, we then looked at manipulation checks. And when we looked at our intelligence discrepancy manipulation, we found that it didn't actually manipulate parents' discrepancies. When we looked at our perception of child intelligence manipulation, we found that our Anne de Gaulle prompt and our Shirley Temple prompt had the opposite effect of what it was intended, so that parents who were presented with the Anne de Gaulle prompt perceived their child as no more or less intelligent than they did prior to seeing it. Parents who were presented with the Shirley Temple prompt, on the other hand, reported their child as being more intelligent after seeing Shirley. So we conducted a factorial MANOVA to test the effects of the discrepancy prime and the child intelligence prime on parental satisfaction and parent-child relationship satisfaction. And overall analyses revealed there were no significant multivariate effects or interactions. So we then conducted 2 follow-up univariate ANOVAs, 1 for each of our dependent variables. And we found a significant univariate interaction between the discrepancy prime conditions and child intelligence prime on parental satisfaction, but not parent-child relationship satisfaction. So specifically, when parents were presented with the Albert Einstein prompt, they reported greater parental satisfaction after being presented with the Shirley Temple prompt than they did when they were presented with the Anne de Gaulle prompt. Because we had no evidence that our manipulation affected parents' discrepancies, we conducted a hierarchical multiple regression using participants measured discrepancies. And we found a significant relationship between intelligence discrepancies and parental satisfaction, such that as parents' discrepancies grew, they experienced less parental satisfaction. Even though we found no significant multivariate main effects or interactions between the discrepancy prime and the child intelligence prime. We did find significant univariate interaction between the discrepancy prime and the child intelligence prime on parental satisfaction. So when parents saw Einstein, they reported greater parental role satisfaction when they saw Shirley Temple than when they saw Anne de Gaulle. We know that seeing Shirley resulted in them thinking that their child is more intelligent. So when parents were exposed to a high intelligent comparison, they experienced greater parental satisfaction when they thought their child was intelligent. Also, the significant relationship found revealed in our exploratory analysis shows that parents' discrepancies do have an impact on their parental role satisfaction. So even with our exploratory analysis, though, we did not find anything of significance for parent-child relationship satisfaction. And this suggests that parents' perceptions of themselves and perceptions of their children don't significantly affect parent-child relationship satisfaction. Another possibility is that larger predictors, such as marital satisfaction, may affect the parent-child relationship in a way that washed out any effects our independent variables may have had. And we consider marital satisfaction because previous research has found that when parents experience lower marital satisfaction, they tend to also report lower parent-child relationship satisfaction. Another possibility is that parents may have thought about and responded based on their relationship with their child overall versus in that moment after seeing our manipulation. Parents of multiple children may have also thought of all of their kids and generalized, even though we did try and attempt to focus the parents on just their oldest child. Our study did have multiple limitations, the first being with our intelligence discrepancy manipulation, not actually manipulating parents' discrepancies. So we know they were affected, we just don't know why. And it's possible that seeing Einstein primed parents to specifically think of intelligence, but not engage in social comparison. They may have also been primed to consider the domain of intelligence and compared their child while considering its importance, which may explain the boost in parental satisfaction. It may also be that those who saw Bobby were made to consider the importance of athleticism, but this isn't something that we measured for in their perception of their child. Okay. And then focus on eldest child. So for parent-child relationship satisfaction, as I mentioned before, it's possible that parents may have just generalized across multiple children or across their relationship so far with their child rather than just in that moment. And so one of the things that we propose doing in the future for other studies, follow-up studies, is to have parents engage in writing a short prompt about one child so that we can really attempt to ensure that they're focusing on just the one kid. For parental satisfaction, it also has all of the possible issues I mentioned for parent-child relationship satisfaction, as far as parents not focusing on the one child. Because it focuses on something broad, like overall, it's even more interesting that it was affected by our manipulation. Okay, and then with our perception of child intelligence manipulation, it worked in the opposite way than was intended. And this may have been that parents may have experienced empathy, which could have prevented them from engaging in social comparison as intended. Regardless of limitations, our findings still have implications. So the significant interaction we found offers some insight into the parent-child relationship. So if seeing Albert Einstein increased the importance of intelligence to parents, then this suggests they may feel more competent or experience greater parental satisfaction when they think their child performs well in a domain that they care about. In everyday life, this offers one possible explanation as to why parents guide their children towards certain activities or careers over others, or aim to foster certain traits over others, because they get that boost in parental satisfaction. In less directive situations, this offers a possible explanation why parents may offer more verbal or emotional support or encouragement when kids present certain traits over others or excel in certain areas over others. And it may also be a possible explanation why parents might brag about one kid and their accomplishments and overlook the other kid's accomplishments. So, for example, if they really value the trait of athleticism, they might put a lot of energy into supporting and boasting about little Jimmy's soccer tournaments, and overlook the academic achievements of one of their other children. And this plays into the concept of favoritism. And this wouldn't necessarily be an intentional thing. Parents may just feel like better parents and have that boost of parental satisfaction when their kids are perceived to excel in these certain areas or to present with these certain traits. And the significant relationship found in our exploratory analysis also has implications, particularly from the finding that as the size of parents' discrepancies is reduced, the greater parental role satisfaction they experience. And this suggests that the closer a parent thinks they are to how intelligent they want to be, the greater parental role satisfaction they experience, or the more competent they feel as parents. And it would be really interesting to see, move myself, if this is something that's unique to the trait of intelligence or if it's true across other domains as well. Other future directions that we think would be beneficial are the use of alternative manipulations. So ensuring that our intelligence discrepancy actually manipulates parents' discrepancies. And for our perception of child intelligence manipulation, possibly using an above instead of below average comparison to attempt to address the possibility that empathy played a role this time around. And then, of course, for our prompts to focus parents in on just the one child. As I said before, it would be really cool to explore other domains to see if what we found is uniquely related to intelligence or if discrepancies in other domains produce similar results. And of course, in future studies, we would like to control for marital satisfaction if that was something that affected any effects that our independent variables may have had. Okay, well, thank you for attending my virtual presentation, and I will open the virtual floor to questions.